liberty, and justice for all.
Wait, you're not done yet. I have something for each of you. Thank you for coming and for
Turn around, the
matching.
principal wants
No,
to get
Mr. Jean wants to get your picture.
Presentation, communications.
I have nothing for communications this evening.
President's report, we had an executive session was held before the meeting at 5:45 p.m. for the purpose of legal and personnel.
I haven't heard anything back yet.
IU report, we'll move on from that, come back to it if possible. Superintendent's report.
I'm going to start by recognizing Mr. Armbruster, Mrs. Wolfslegel, Mr. Mincer, and Mrs. Mockmer to talk about unified bocce. While they're coming up to the podium, you should all have at your seats a packet that looks like this. All these documents are also attached to the agenda for public about unified bocce.
Good evening. I'm Steph Mockmer. I can't even say my name. Steph Mockmer. I teach at the high school. I'm a life skills teacher. A year ago or so, I've had some people approach me about the possibility of bringing unified bocce to Jersey Shore. And at the time, I was like, I wasn't really familiar with unified bocce. And so I reached out to see where it was in our area. And I went to Central Mountain to watch a match at Central Mountain because they've had it for years. And the more we researched, the more I found out that it's really a lot of places we're kind of behind in the times on unified sports. So unified sports are sports that include both our regular ed students as well as our special education students. And there are some qualifying criteria, thank you, for the special education students. They have to have some significant cognitive delays. So, want to go ahead? We contacted, I'll give it his mic, from Special Olympics, Mike Bovino, and he met with us. I went to Justin first, and we had to wait until we had a athletic director, but both Justin and Mr. Spencer are on board and pretty excited about the possibility of bringing bocce to Jersey Shore. So we met with Mr. Bovino on Zoom, and he gave us some information about how Special Olympics helps to bring this to our school district, and it's pretty exciting. There are 3 parts to the program. Want me to tell that?
I can jump in.
Sure.
So there are 3 components to it. The first and foremost component is actually hosting unified bocce team. It's going to be set up with a minimum of 6 athletes, but we can go up to 8 athletes. And that team, the requirements, which we'll get to in a little bit, we have to host 1 event and then travel. The season is a minimum of 4, which you'll see the league is a little bit larger than that, so we'd be able to have more opportunities than just that. The other component is eventually, like January, we would have to start up a club, which would be a unified club that can talk about school culture and looking at doing some different activities to help promote that, which is the third component there. If you see that whole school engagement activities, Mr. Bovino talked to us about that, and we're actually ahead on that with how we're implementing our SEL curriculum at the high school level. So we actually have those components already in place. But those are the 3 essential things that we have to do in order for the Special Olympics to continue supporting us. You want to jump ahead, Quinn? Thank you.
To me, this was the most exciting part, is Special Olympics pretty much provides everything for the first 2 years. And for the third year, they'll continue to support us. So they provide all the equipment, they provide all the technical support, all the training. They provide $1,000 towards for the coach's stipend. They provide all the uniforms, which we can keep, so they'll continue to be good even after Special Olympics is no longer needed. They provide state championship opportunities and all of the training and resource guides. So that's a really big piece compared to what they ask us to provide. All they ask us to provide is to host one regular season competition and provide the transportation to away matches. So it's really a great opportunity for our district. They'll provide all of that for the first 2 years, and then into the third year, they ask us to fundraise, to start matching the funds, but if we can't, or we only get part ways, they'll continue to provide funding for us. The teams that are in our area are Williamsport, Central Mountain, Shikellamy, Mifflinburg, Warrior Run, and Muncie is also in the process of starting.
And that's all part of the PAC. Now, Muncie's not regularly a member of the PAC, but since they're pushing the unified bocce, the PAC has decided to let them be in our division with that, so that we can all have 6 teams to go against, 7 teams.
This is a varsity sport. The students will be able to earn varsity letters. We want the other sports to come out and support the team. This is just a really great opportunity for our students in special education to be able to get involved with a super minimal cost to the district. And if you want to go ahead. So Mr. Mentor checked on costs for travel.
Yeah, so this year, the way we did a schedule for us, preliminary schedule, if we were to get it into the conference, in our away matches are Mifflinburg, Warrior Run, and Muncie. On our schedule, the Central Mountain, Shikellamy, and Williamsport would all be at home. So those are the costs to go to Mifflinburg, Warrior Run, and Muncie with a 3-hour layover, 2 hours for the match, because that's what he said they typically run. If they run completely with 3 games, and then a half hour on either end just for coordinating everybody to get there, so get in and get out. So that's for a 3-hour layover and transportation to those areas. And it could be cheaper if we're not there for 3 hours. So, and then the following year, the second year, Central Mountain and Williamsport would not be very much cost in terms of travel. Now, Shikellamy is probably going to be closer to the $300 to $400 mark, but the rest of them, the other two will be right around. I would imagine more than $200 to go to Williamsport and Central Mountain. So those would be the total cost of the program this year. Would be those transportation costs this year.
We would be able to use the cafeteria or any other space that the courts. They give us all of the supplies, their PVC piping that fit together to make the courts. So we would just assemble that. They ask that you practice 2 nights a week after school. It's during the winter sports season. So you're just talking the gym for 3 different matches.
And what they said is they didn't give us any dates for any of our matches. So none of those matches, and the same is for the whole league. So when it doesn't, they try to make it easy enough so you can fit it into your schedule for your when you have open spaces for your gym. So we can determine with Central Mountain when they would come to us, and you can determine with Mifflinburg when we would come to them, so what's best fits their gym schedule, and not interfere with everything. So, and actually make it nice and easy to get us so they can have that game gym content.
So that would all fit in, you figured out all this out and it fits into our schedule with everything else?
We could make it fit for sure. Yeah. I say it's 3 matches, 3 days. If there's more than 3 days throughout the winter where we have all 3 varsity sports away or 2 of the 3 varsity sports away, we absolutely, I'm confident that we can make it fit.
I've already been contacted by 3 different parents from students in my class who are interested. Actually, before any of this started, I have one who contacted moved here from Central Mountain, and they wanted to know if we also had that. But since then, I've had 2 more contact me. I've also had regular ed students who are interested who have already come to me. So I know that there's interest. I don't anticipate an issue with filling the team. We've had interest from multiple people on coaching. And you want to talk about drafting?
Sure, yeah, so,
Justin will be a great rep.
yeah, I have experience with this from when I was in college. At Juniata, they hosted the national qualifier that actually then students went on to go to Greece to compete. So I have officiated. It's been like 18 years, I think. But he promised me that it's a half-hour course that I can take, and I'll be right back. And I know we have some other teachers that are interested in stepping up as well. So as far as covering all that, I think we're ready to go. We just need to assemble a
What
team.
is it exactly? I've never seen this, bocce. Yeah,
Picture that you would show us? I agree, I don't know what it is.
I don't know if we have a picture.
I'm looking at the picture, but
So it's a very
Yeah, on the
popular
front of your
game.
packet, there is one on the right-hand side. It's not real great.
There's a little ball that they roll, and then you roll the bigger balls, and whoever gets the closest, there's scoring involved. I honestly, at this point, don't know all the rules, but they assured me after the coaches training, I would be,
oh, I see.
So and then if you, further in, there's another picture of them on the court in a gym.
So I do know at some of the other districts that I've worked at, they actually have staff that will practice against. So maybe we could set that up. We could have some board members practice against the team. We'll all learn together.
How many compose a team, comprise a team?
a minimum of 6, a maximum of 8.
Okay, so you can have a fluctuation.
Yeah, and it's the same as winter sports. The students would have to get physicals and sign up just like everyone else. And you can't participate in another winter sport. So like a basketball player couldn't also be on the team. It has to be, this is their winter sport.
Now, after the 2 years, just supposing fundraising doesn't work out, have you thought about what the annual cost might be?
Well,
But besides we're going to have to travel regardless, yeah.
so down the road, we'd be looking at the travel costs. We'd already have the court need just like a uniform schedule. He said that they last about 4 to 5 years, right?
Yeah, they're
Just polo
polos.
shirts.
Okay,
So we would have those to keep. So you'd be looking at whatever the coach's stipend was and transportation.
thank you.
Not compared to other sports,
Yeah, very minimal,
very minimal.
yeah. Thank you.
You might have already answered this, but do the students have to keep a certain GPA for this?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so this is not PIAA sanctioned, but PIAA supports it. And so they want it to run just like any other sport with eligibility requirements, practice requirements. And then they actually do have a championship that happens at the Giant Center right before the basketball playoffs start. So qualifying schools go down and they compete at the Giant Center, just like all the other PIAA sports. It's just not PIAA sanctioned currently.
Some of the schools, like, I think in Southern Tioga, have 2 teams now because 8 wasn't enough spots, and there's enough interest to have 2 teams.
That's, I was gonna ask if you could have more than 1 team per school district.
You can.
We
Just like to not bite off more than that.
We asked that question in the meeting and they told us to go slower.
I'm just saying, I'm pretty sure the students are all over this. We have such a great group of kids, so.
Well, and I feel like, as Mr. Bovino talked about the different things, this really fits into all of the things that we're doing at high school right now as far as our SEL, all of our social emotional learning and making sure that kids feel like they belong, fostering respect, all of those things. And I just think this is a really great opportunity. And considering how much Special Olympics supports us in the beginning, I would hate for us to pass this up.
Any other board questions?
be on the agenda,
It would
the
be
next
on
agenda?
the October 23rd agenda for your approval.
Okay.
Thank you all so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Enders to talk about the budget calendar.
So the budget calendar was attached to tonight's agenda. It's very similar to years past as far as order, how we're going to do things. First important date, as I talked to you in September, would be adoption of the Act 1 resolution. The resolution to stay within the Act 1 index would be November the 13th, or going down the proposed preliminary budget route. Just so you know, I know there's conversations at the legislators in Harrisburg to move up the primary election. This will still comply if they move it up to the earlier March date. So actually, if they move it up to the earlier March date, you're going to have to do it March 13th or call a special board meeting. So that will be in compliance. So there again, that's important date number one. Assuming that we pass the resolution to stay within the index, the next important date would be May the 6th. That would be the adoption of the proposed final budget, AKA the preliminary budget. Then we would go into May 20th with approval of a real estate tax increase if we have one. Then the final budget would be approved on June the 10th. One tidbit regarding the May board meetings, Dr. Ulmer and I looked at the calendar, discussed the calendar. We are moving the May meetings to the first and third Mondays of May instead of our traditional second and fourth. Two reasons, well, multiple reasons. One, you maintain a week in between the last meeting of April and the first meeting of May. So you still have a week break in there, won't be Mondays back to back. Two, because of the 30-day requirement for the preliminary budget, you would have to approve your preliminary budget at the April meeting. This allows it to go to the May 6th one. Three, this takes care of the Memorial Day holiday, which is the fourth Monday of May.
There was a lot of thought there.
I was just gonna say that.
And to expand on that, just so you're aware, April is odd in that April 2024 has 5 Mondays. So that's why there is an extra week. There would have been a 2-week break without a meeting, or there would have been 2 Mondays without a meeting had we not moved the May meeting up and to the first Monday in May. So it actually worked because
You'll get those 2 Mondays off at the end of May into June. Are there any questions regarding the calendar? I will make sure you guys all get color copies printed at the next board meeting with this, because the color coding is important. As you see, anything's in red. If the resolution is passed, you can ignore anything in red.
I had a question. So you said, why would you have to have a special meeting on March 13th? Why couldn't you do it on the March 11th meeting?
March 13th is your regular scheduled board meeting.
Oh,
If Harrisburg moves up the primary to March 14th, March 19th, which I believe is what the House passed, the resolution needs to be passed by November 30th.
But
So
what-
you would need to have a special board meeting if you do not do it at the November 13th board meeting.
but it says March 11th is the school board meeting.
We're talking November.
Oh, you're talking about November?
Yeah.
you did say March.
Yeah, I was
Sorry,
gonna
my
say.
fault. November the 13th is your scheduled date to vote on the resolution
Okay.
to stay with the index or to go the preliminary budget route.
Okay, gotcha.
So if you maintain that November 13th vote,
Okay.
you're
We're good.
okay.
Yeah.
No matter what Harrisburg does.
Any other questions about that calendar? Okay, that's my report.
Thank you. Moving on to courtesy of the floor for public comment on agenda items. There is none, so we'll continue on. Personnel. Appointment of Amy Pecky as a 12-month accounts payable secretary effective upon release of the current employer. Annual salary of $39,259. The salary will be prorated for the remainder of the 23-24 school year. Jared Pogolewski as a volunteer girls basketball coach effective the 2023-2024 season. Tom Butzler as a volunteer lifeguard effective the 23-24 season. The 23-24 winter sports coaching staff and stipends per the attached listing. FMLA from February the 13th, 2024 through April the 10th, 2024 for employee 2023-24-13. Jared Olsemer as a volunteer softball coach effective the 23-24 season. Appointment of Harrison Young, CTE teacher, as mentor for Isaac Turner for the 23-24 school year at a stipend of $510. Accepting a letter of resignation from Abigail Packer as high school guidance secretary effective October 13th, 2023. May I have a motion for A through H?
Motion.
Second.
Questions or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, like sign. Motion carries. Moving on to building and grounds, no discussion actions. Finance, no, did I miss a page? Oh. That's in there. Sorry, turned too many pages. Moving on to curriculum and instruction. One item, the high school musical, Damn Yankees, as per contract. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do you have any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, like sign. Motion carries. Next is building and grounds, no discussion items. G, finance, no discussion items. Moving on to miscellaneous. We have authorization for bid of secretary to cast the school district's vote for the slate of candidates running for PSBA office. These will be roll call. An agreement of affiliation between Jersey Shore Area School District and Western Governors University regarding student teaching placement, observation, and evaluations. An amended renewal of the Jersey Shore Area School District Pre-K Counts Partnership Agreement with All Things Bright and Beautiful Daycare for the 23-24 school year. A Keep Safe Transportation Services Agreement for the 23-24 school year. A school nurse practicum affiliation agreement with Slippery Rock University effective for 5 years from the date of execution. An ESS Northeast LLC Source for Teachers agreement effective the 23-24 and 24-25 school years. May I have a motion for A through F? Or B through F? I always did a motion and then we just, I already said a roll call, but I'm okay.
So we're doing B through F and then we're coming back.
May I have a motion for B through F?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, like sign. Motion to B through F is carries. Back to letter A for the election of the PSBA officers. Mr. Enders.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Ms. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Stolberg,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
No.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Well, wait,
No,
Jesse's
she's here.
on.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm here.
Ms. Edwards,
No.
motion passes 6-3. You're voting for the vice president, Sabrina Thacker. Yes or no? Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Stolberg,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
No.
Mr. Kinley,
No.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-3. You're voting for the treasurer, Karen Beck Pulley. Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Stolberg,
Yes.
Ms. Edwards,
No.
Mrs. Grant,
No.
Mr. Kinley,
No.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-4. You're voting for the insurance trustee seat 1, Marion Neal, yes or no? Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Miss Edwards,
No.
Mrs. Grant,
No.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-3. You're voting for insurance trustee seat 2, Mike
Yes.
Fascinello,
Sorry.
yes or no? Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mrs. Calhoun,
Yes.
Ms. Stober,
Yes.
Miss Edwards,
No.
Mrs. Grant,
No.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
No.
Mrs. Thomas.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-3. So you'll need to give me 3 names for the school board secretary's forum steering committee. You have 4 names before you. You can choose 3 of them.
Point of clarification, up to 3.
Up to 3, sorry. The names are Jennifer Davidson, Bethany Ziegler, Jamie Lynn Zimmerowski, Betsy Gates. Mr. Allen,
Jennifer Davidson, Bethany Ziegler, and Jamie Lynn Zimkowski, however you say that.
Mrs. Calhoun,
Ms. Ziegler, Ms. Gates, and Ms. Davidson.
Ms. Stobler,
Jennifer Davidson, Betsy Gates, and Jamie Lynn Zimmerowski.
Miss Edwards,
Davison, Ziegler, Gates. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
This is Grant.
Davidson, Ziegler, and Zimmerowski.
Mr. Kinley.
Ziegler, Gates, and Zimmerowski.
Did you say Gates as your second one, Wayne?
Correct.
Okay.
This is Petrowski.
Ziegler, Zimrowski, and Gates.
This is Stemler.
I'm voting no.
This is Thomas.
Ziegler. That's it. So you're gonna put on Davison and Ziegler? I have 6 for Davison and Ziegler and 5 for the other two.
You say it's 6 for Davison?
But this time I didn't write their initials down like I did on the other page.
5 for Davidson. I have 5 for Davidson, Zimmerowski, and Gates. I have 7 for Ziegler.
So do we go just with the top one, or do we do the top 2? Because aren't 2 of them tied or not?
I think you ought to break the tie for the two that are tied. Go
3 tied.
3 tied. You wanna go?
Which ones are tied?
break
I'm
the
sorry.
tie.
Everybody but Bethany Ziegler.
Ziegler got 7, everybody else got 5.
So it's Davidson, Gates, or Zimmerowski.
Right.
Yes.
So you can go up to 2.
Okay, now you, Mr. Allen, you have 2 choices on the following 3.
None of them are Mike.
Who is?
Davidson and Zimmerkowski.
Calhoun?
Davidson and Gates.
Ms. Goldberg?
Davidson and Zimmerkowski.
Ms. Edwards?
Can you tell me which ones they are again? Because I lost a little bit.
Yep. Jennifer Davidson, Jamie Lynn Zimmerowski, Betsy Gates.
And I have to choose 2 of those 3.
Yep.
Okay. Davison and Gates. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got it.
Okay, thank you.
Davidson and Zim.
What was your second one? Oh, the one you can't.
Mr. Kinley?
That one.
Gates and Zimmerowski.
That's who I'm saying too.
Mrs. Petrowski?
Zimrowski and Gates.
Ms. Stemler?
No.
Mrs. Thomas?
I'm gonna go with Davison and Zimmerowski.
So it will be Jennifer Davidson and Jamie Lynn Zimmerowski. So your 3 candidates will be Bethany Ziegler, Jennifer Davidson, Bethany Ann Ziegler, and Janie Lynn Zimmerloff.
Thanks for covering that, Ben.
So the thing is that Mr. Enders will put in one ballot for the board. Next on the agenda is old business. Nothing is identified. Anyone have any comments or discussion?
Say old business.
Yes,
Can I ask Dr. Ulmer a question?
sure. I think, well, she was asking you.
They posted in the newspaper about the budgeting for the Royal community in the Sunday Gazette. And last month's meeting, I attended the Republican committee meeting and talked to Joe Ham. And basically, he stated that the definition for some of the funding is not accessible yet because either they don't have it written or the explanation isn't available yet. But I didn't know if that or if we know anything more about any of the safety funding, because it sounded like it's all going to go to the larger cities like Pittsburgh and Philadelphia.
I don't think we don't have a fiscal code bill yet, which is what he was probably trying to describe as the funding was established with the budget, but they didn't establish a fiscal code bill for some of the funding, which tells state agencies how to distribute the funding. So then in some cases there's funding available. We don't know if we're getting it or not yet because the fiscal code has not been passed to know where the funding is supposed to be sent out. So we do not yet know the status of our safety funding.
Okay, so like, am I understanding it right where it says, like, for example, like if it were, I don't know, like something obscure like agriculture, like they're gonna have that it's for farmers that have fowl, but they're not explaining what all that entails, correct?
You are right on. So in our case, there's safety funding set aside for schools in the state budget, but they have not established how it's going to be distributed or to who. So no one has received any funding. The same thing is true for student teacher stipends. They've set money aside in the budget for supporting student teachers while they're student teaching, but because they didn't establish a code bill that says how they get it, how much they get, or who's distributing the money, none of it has been passed out.
Okay, I thought that's what that meant, and I didn't think it had changed since last month, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Are you gonna ask her about the IU stuff, or?
Do you want to go? Do you have an IU report? You weren't on yet when we went through that.
I yield.
No.
Did you hear me?
Yep, we heard it.
Moving on to courtesy of the floor. This courtesy of the floor will be for public comment on non-agenda items. State your name, address, and identify what you would like to address, and you will have 3 minutes. Anyone would like to address the board?
Craig Allen, Watson Township. The first thing, and it wasn't something I was going to speak about tonight, but I think it's disappointing that this board, who served with Ted Fanning, a couple of you, failed to recognize his passing. That's unfortunate. My primary topic tonight is in regards to the Q-collar donations that you accepted last week. First, I'd like to thank the McCracken family for their generous donation and purchase of Q-collars. That would probably send you as well. I'm sure you have something to do with it. However, there's been some misleading information distributed regarding these devices. The most egregious is that the Q collar is FDA approved. It is not FDA approved. It is FDA cleared. And as in many cases, words do matter. FDA approved is for higher risk devices, lab equipment, imaging equipment, and that type. FDA cleared, there are two different classifications of FDA cleared. One applies to the Q collar device, and another one would apply to tongue depressors. So that's a lot less than FDA approved. The unfortunate thing is the press, the Sun Gazette rather, and WNEP both listed as FDA approved. So I question where they got their information from. And I can only assume that it came from here. So gave out poor information. That's the case. Being aware that board meetings are not the purpose for debating and having question and answer sessions, it also seems reasonable that constituents can expect their elected representatives to respond to questions submitted to them in written form. While it's also reasonable to have any and all board members respond when submitting an inquiry to the JSASD board.org email address. In the case of the Q collar donation, I sent my email only to my Region 1 representatives. I would note that only Mr. Kinley provided what I would consider a reasonable response to my list of questions. He at least responded to 4 of my specific questions, although he also got one wrong, and that was the FDA approval section. In large part, Ms. Calhoun referred me to the Q collar website and claimed that she has also reviewed other publications but didn't provide me any links or titles for those publications. She also referred me to the Sun Gazette article, and although those articles are typically repeat information provided by the school board. So it was, in my opinion, useless to read that. The other issue that I had is that according to the motion that was made, these collars are only eligible for use by the football team. That is a violation of policy 702. Donations can only be made to the school district as a whole or to an individual building. So what you've done by accepting a donation to just the football team is you've excluded all the other sports teams who might have use for that piece of equipment. I know from watching soccer this fall, we've had a number of concussion protocols on both the women's and the men's teams. So you can forget, as far as I'm concerned, reserving those just for the football team, because that doesn't work according to the policy. So the other question I had is whether that applies to Title IX, because what you've done is effectively purchased equipment or accepted a donation for equipment that's completely for a men's team and excludes the women's teams.
Please wind it down, sir.
Yep. I have a lot more information, and I will send that to every board member when I get back home tonight.
Thank you. Any others to address the board?
Walnut Street, Jersey Shore. I'm here to address an issue happening in a kindergarten class. I'm here to support all the children, but my daughter and my grandson had a meeting with Dr. Umler and Mrs. Johnson, and the respect that she did not receive as a caring, concerned mother really upsets me. And Dr. Umler knows exactly where I'm going with this. I understand every child deserves an education. I have a special needs son. He graduated. He's in a wheelchair. He's cerebral palsy. He knows a lot. He's nonverbal. So every child, but also every child deserves the safe learning environment. So something needs to be done. And as far as what was said to my daughter as she went in asking for help and told that she will not be getting help, so uncalled for. And so there needs to be something done, and this is a touchy subject because the dear young boy that is disrupting and causing safety issues deserves to go to school and get an education. But these children, at least twice a week, are pulled into another kindergarten room for safety. They're setting out in the hallways for safety. This is a kindergarten class. This is what their learning school is all about. They're not getting an education when they're going in there scared. And to be told my grandson's a liar when he says he's afraid is so unacceptable. And they will not stop here if something doesn't change. And not because of this dear other young boy, and there's two, but the ones, not because of him acting out, because of the higher authorities that taken on a job to see that every child gets an education, is turning their backs on ones that they just think they can shove under the carpet. But this mom and grandma won't get pushed under no carpet for any child. I don't care if a child come to me and said this is happening, I will stand up for them. And right now it's my grandson and the disrespect my daughter received. And I really feel like next board meeting, she wanted to be here now, but her husband or her boyfriend's working late. She couldn't be, and I was not missing it. But I truly believe she needs an apology from Dr. Ulmer. You never disrespect a mother that is so concerned for her child. That's really all I have for you guys to take home and think about.
Thank you. Anyone else that'd like to present to the board? Or anything from the board? There will be an executive session after which no business will take place for the purpose of negotiations. May I have a motion for adjournment? Can we get a second? Meeting's adjourned.